Cole was reading a research report when the transmission arrived. The signal cut through every communication device on the colony at once. It was loud and clear and impossible to ignore. Laura was in the laboratory next door when she heard it too. She dropped the sample she was holding and ran to find. The message was short. The Galactic Council of 12 species had issued an official summons. 2 human representatives were required to appear before the Great Chamber within 30 standard days. Failure to comply would result in the immediate restriction of all human travel rights across known space. Read the message 3 times. He studied alien life forms and ecosystems. He was not a diplomat or a politician. He had no idea why the council would want him. Laura stood beside him with her arms crossed. She was also They had worked together on New Horizon for almost 4 years. The colony was located on the edge of explored space. It was a quiet place, a safe place. Nothing interesting ever happened there. Until now. The colony administrator contacted them within the hour. His name was Greg, and he looked worried. He explained that the council had specifically requested researchers. They did not want soldiers or politicians. They wanted scientists who could speak about Earth and about human biology. Asked why, Greg said he did not know, but he said the council had mentioned something about a classification review, something about Earth being listed as a Category 7. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. She knew about the classifications. Every human who traveled in space knew about them. It was one of the first things they taught in the academy. The galaxy had a ranking system for dangerous planets. Category 1 was mild. Category 7 was considered completely uninhabitable. No intelligent life was supposed to evolve on a Category 7 world. Earth was Category 7. Humans were not supposed to exist. And Laura left New Horizon 3 days later. The journey to the council station took 3 weeks aboard a transport vessel called the Starward Dawn. They spent most of that time reading everything they could find about the Galactic Council and its history. The council had existed for over 10,000 years. It was made up of 12 species that had reached a certain level of technological advancement. They governed trade and travel and diplomacy across hundreds of star systems. They maintained peace through strict regulations and careful control. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 80 years. They were still considered newcomers. They were tolerated but not trusted. Many species looked at humans with suspicion. Some looked at them with fear. Did not understand the fear at first. Humans were not particularly large or strong compared to some species. They did not have natural weapons like claws or venom. They did not have armor or camouflage. They were just people. But Laura understood. She had spent years studying how other species perceived humanity. She knew that what made humans frightening was not any single trait. It was the combination. It was the fact that humans could survive almost anywhere. They could eat almost anything. They could adapt to conditions that would kill most other species within hours. And they came from a world that should have killed them long ago. The council station was enormous. It hung in the void between 3 star systems like a metal flower made of light and glass. Ships from 100 different worlds docked along its outer rings, watched through the viewport as they approached. He had never seen anything so vast. They were met at the docking bay by a group of guards. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed almost transparent. They moved carefully as if afraid of breaking. When stepped off the ship, his boots made a heavy sound on the metal floor. The guards flinched. Laura noticed. She filed it away in her mind for later. The guards led them through long corridors made of some kind of crystal. The walls reflected light in strange patterns. Everything felt fragile and beautiful and cold. Kept his hands at his sides. He was afraid of touching something and shattering it by accident. They were given quarters near the great chamber. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for species much lighter than humans. The furniture was delicate. The beds were too soft, sat on a chair and felt it creak beneath his weight. Laura stood by the window and looked out at the stars. She was thinking about what was coming. She was thinking about all the things they might be asked. She was thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. The hearing was scheduled for the following morning. Neither of them slept much that night. When the time came, they were escorted to the great chamber by the same guards. The chamber was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above. Seats rose in tiers along the walls. Each section was filled with representatives from a different species. Recognized some of them from his studies. The with their glowing skin sat in the upper tiers. They occupied a section near the floor. Their bodies clicked and shifted as they watched. The aquatic floated in large transparent tanks filled with green water. Their tentacles pressed against the glass. There were others too, species had never seen before, species with too many eyes or not enough limbs or bodies that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. All of them were watching, all of them were waiting. And Laura were brought to the center of the chamber. There were no chairs for them, they were expected to stand. High Chancellor Hex rose from his seat. His skin glowed with a soft golden light that pulsed when he spoke. His voice was translated through devices embedded in the chamber walls. It came out flat and mechanical, but the meaning was clear. You are here to answer for your species. You are here to explain why humanity has hidden the truth of its origins. Earth has been classified as a Category 7. No intelligent life should exist there. Yet you stand before us. You breathe our air. You do not die. Felt his heart beating faster. He looked at Laura. She gave him a small nod. He turned back to face the Chancellor and the hundreds of alien eyes watching from above. We are not here to hide anything. We are here to tell you the truth. The chamber fell silent. Every being in the room leaned forward. They wanted to hear what the humans had to say, and knew that what happened next would change everything. The silence in the great chamber lasted for a long moment. Could hear his own breathing. He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down on him from every direction. The alien delegates watched and waited. They wanted answers. High Chancellor Hex remained standing. His glowing skin pulsed with colors that could not read. They communicated through light as well as sound. Their emotions showed on their bodies like signals. Right now, the Chancellor was showing something that might have been curiosity or might have been contempt. Laura stepped forward. She had prepared for this moment during the entire journey. She had studied the council records. She had read the classification reports. She knew exactly what they believed about Earth and about humanity. And she knew they were wrong. Chancellor, members of the Council, you have asked us why humanity exists when your records say we should not. The answer is simple. Your records are incomplete. A wave of noise rippled through the chamber. They clicked their mandibles in what sounded like anger. They bubbled and churned in their tanks. Even the silent species shifted in their seats. Hex raised one thin hand, and the noise stopped. Explain yourself, human. Laura nodded and pulled a small device from her pocket. She pressed a button and a holographic display appeared in the air before her. It showed an image of Earth, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling over the surface. This is you have classified it as Category 7. You have said that no intelligent life could evolve there. You based this classification on survey data collected over 5,000 years ago by automated drones. She pressed another button and the display changed. It showed the remains of 3 small spacecraft. All of them were damaged beyond repair. These are your survey drones. One was destroyed by a storm within 6 hours of landing. One was attacked and consumed by native predators within 12 hours. One corroded in our ocean water within 3 days. Based on these results, your ancestors concluded that Earth was too dangerous for contact. They flagged it and moved on. Hex tilted his head. His skin flickered with pale blue light. The data speaks for itself. Your world destroys technology. Your world kills visitors. This is the definition of a... Laura shook her head. No, Chancellor. This is the definition of a challenging environment. Your drones failed because they were not designed for our conditions. But life on Earth did not fail. Life on Earth adapted. She changed the display again. Now it showed images of Earth's creatures, lions and sharks and eagles, wolves hunting in packs, elephants moving across grasslands, crocodiles wading in rivers. Each image was more impressive than the last. Watched the reactions around the chamber. He saw fear in some faces. He saw disbelief in others. These aliens had never seen predators like this. Their worlds had never produced anything so dangerous. Every creature you see evolved on Earth. Every one of them is a survivor of millions of years of competition. They hunt, they fight, they adapt. The weak die and the strong continue. She paused and looked around the chamber. And humans are the strongest of them all. The delegate rose from his seat. His voice came through the translators as a harsh clicking sound. You claim superiority, you claim strength, but you have no claws, no armor, no venom. Your bodies are soft and weak. How can you call yourselves the strongest? Answered before Laura could speak. Because we do not need those things. He stepped forward and stood beside Laura. He was not a speaker by nature. He preferred laboratories and research stations, but he knew this moment required something more than data. On Earth, we faced every danger you can imagine. We faced predators larger and faster and stronger than us. We faced weather that could freeze us or burn us or drown us. We faced diseases that killed millions. We faced starvation and drought and disaster. He held up his hands and looked at them. We survived all of it, not because we were born with weapons, but because we learned to make them. Not because we were born with armor, but because we learned to build shelter. Not because we were immune to the cold, but because we learned to make fire. The chamber was silent again, could feel the attention of every delegate focused on him. Your species evolved on safe worlds, worlds with stable climates and predictable seasons, worlds where food was plentiful and dangers were few. You developed technology slowly over millions of years because you did not need to hurry. You had time. He shook his head. We did not have time. On Earth, every day was a fight for survival. Every generation faced new challenges. Those who could not adapt died. Those who could adapt passed their strength to their children. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we became something new, something your classifications never predicted. Laura took over again. She changed the display to show human achievements, cities and bridges and spacecraft, hospitals and farms and power plants. We did not just survive our Chancellor, we conquered it. We spread to every corner of our planet. We lived in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. We climbed mountains and crossed oceans and eventually reached the stars. Hex sat down slowly. His skin had gone pale. The colors that flickered across his body were muted and uncertain. What you describe is impossible. Evolution does not work that way. Intelligence requires stability. It requires safety. It requires time to develop. Laura smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That is what you believe because that is how it happened for you. But the universe is larger than your experienced Chancellor. There is more than one path to intelligence. Yours was the path of patience. Ours was the path of pressure. She turned off the holographic display. You asked why we exist when your records say we should not. The answer is that your records were written by species who never faced what we faced. You looked at Earth and saw death. We looked at Earth and saw home. Put his hand on Laura's shoulder. We are not here to threaten you. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to show you that your understanding of the universe is incomplete. There are worlds out there that you have abandoned, species that you have forgotten, and some of them may have survived just like we did. The chamber remained silent for a long time. The delegates looked at each other. They whispered in languages that the translators did not catch. They were afraid. Could see it in their eyes and their movements, and the way they leaned away from the two humans standing in the center of the room. They were afraid of what humanity represented, a species that should not exist, a people forged in fire and blood and endless struggle. And now those people were standing in the heart of galactic civilization, asking questions that no one wanted to answer. Hex finally spoke again. His voice was quieter than before. "We will need time to consider what you have shown us. This hearing will continue tomorrow." Nodded, he understood. The council needed time to decide what to do with the truth. But as he and Laura were escorted from the chamber, he knew that time was running out. The galaxy was about to learn what it really meant to come from a. And nothing would ever be the same, and Laura returned to their quarters that evening. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The weight of what had happened in the chamber pressed down on both of them like a physical thing. Laura sat by the window and watched the stars, paced back and forth across the small room. The delicate furniture creaked every time he passed too close. "They did not believe us." Laura turned to look at him. "They believed us. That is the problem. They are afraid. I could see it in the way they looked at us. We just told them that everything they thought they knew about evolution and survival was wrong. That is not an easy thing to accept." "Stop packing." "So what do we do now? We cannot just keep talking. Words are not enough for them." Laura was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to the communication terminal in the corner of the room. "Then we show them something more than words." She sent a message to the council requesting a special session. She asked for permission to conduct a demonstration. She explained that humans could prove their claims through physical evidence rather than just speeches and data. The response came within an hour. The council agreed. The demonstration was scheduled for the following morning, and Laura were taken to a large facility beneath the great chamber. It was a simulation room. The council used it to test environmental conditions and to train delegates for visits to different worlds. The room was empty when they arrived. The walls were smooth and white and covered with sensors. A viewing gallery hung above the floor. It was filled with council delegates who had come to watch. High Chancellor Hex was there. So was the delegate who had challenged the day before. They were absent because their tanks could not fit in the gallery, but dozens of other species had gathered to see what the humans would do. A technician approached. He was younger than Hex, and his skin glowed with nervous green light. "We have prepared several tests based on conditions from classified across the galaxy. You will be exposed to environments that no council species could survive. If you wish to stop at any time, you may signal and we will end the demonstration." Nodded. "I understand." Laura squeezed his arm. "Be careful." He smiled at her. "I am from Earth. Careful is not really our style." She laughed despite her worry. Then she stepped back and joined the observers in the gallery. Stood alone in the center of the room. He took a deep breath and waited. The first test began. The gravity increased slowly. Felt the pressure building in his legs and his back. It was like someone was pushing down on his shoulders with invisible hands. The display in the gallery showed that gravity had reached 1.3 times standard. Then 1.4. Then 1.5. Adjusted his stance. He bent his knees slightly and kept his core tight. His body was designed to handle stress. His muscles and bones had evolved under Earth gravity, which was already stronger than what most council species experienced. He remained standing. The gallery gasped. Their own bones would have shattered under this pressure. Their thin bodies were built for lighter worlds. They could not believe what they were seeing. The gravity returned to normal, and the second test began. The temperature started to rise. Felt the heat washing over him like a wave. Sweat broke out across his forehead and his arms. His body was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. It was cooling itself through evaporation. The display showed that the temperature had reached 45 degrees, then 50, then 55. Was uncomfortable. His skin was red and his breathing was heavy, but he did not collapse. He did not cry out. He stood in the center of the room and endured. The delegate made a clicking sound. On his temperatures above 30 degrees were considered lethal. His species could not regulate their body heat the way humans could. They would have died within minutes. The temperature dropped and the third test began. Now the air itself changed, smelled sulfur and something bitter that burned his nose. The atmosphere was being contaminated with gases that would poison most species instantly. He coughed, his eyes watered, his lungs worked hard to filter out the toxins, but his body had been built to handle pollution. Earth had volcanoes and wildfires and industrial zones. Humans had breathed bad air for thousands of years. He stayed on his feet. The air cleared and there was a pause, wiped the sweat from his face and looked up at the gallery. He could see the fear in their eyes. He could see the way they leaned back from the glass as if he might somehow reach through and grab them. They were watching something impossible, a creature that could survive what they could not, a being from a world of death who refused to die. Then the final test began. A holographic projection appeared in front of. It was a creature from some distant world. The display identified it as a predator from Prime, the same world that had abandoned thousands of years ago because it was too dangerous. The creature was massive. It stood 3 meters tall with armored plates covering its body. Its jaws were filled with teeth like broken glass. Its eyes glowed with hunger. It was designed to kill. It was designed to terrify. Looked at it for a long moment. He studied its shape and its movements. He watched the way it shifted its weight and flexed its claws. Then he smiled. On Earth, we hunted things like this for sport. The creature lunged at him. Even though it was just a hologram, the movement was fast and violent. Most beings would have frozen in terror. Step to the side. He moved with the smooth efficiency of a predator himself. He tracked the creature with his eyes and positioned his body for a counterattack. The simulation ended. The creature disappeared. Stood alone in the center of the room. He was tired and sweaty and his lungs still burned from the contaminated air. But he was alive. He was standing. The gallery was completely silent. High Chancellor Hex rose from his seat. His skin flickered with colors that had never seen before. It was not fear exactly. It was something deeper, something older. It was the realization that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. Looked up at him. This is what produces Chancellor, not weakness, not victims, survivors. He walked to the edge of the room where Laura was waiting. She took his hand and helped him through the door. Behind them, the council delegates remained frozen in their seats. They had come to watch a demonstration. They had seen something far more terrifying. They had seen the truth. And now they had to decide what to do with it. While recovered from the demonstration, Laura continued her research. She had been given limited access to the council archives as part of the hearing process. The access was supposed to help her prepare for questions, but Laura was not interested in preparing answers. She was interested in finding the truth. The archives were vast. They contained records stretching back over 10,000 years, trade agreements and treaties and scientific surveys, maps of explored space and logs of first contact events. Everything the council had ever done was stored somewhere in those files. Laura searched for anything related to classifications. She wanted to understand how the system had been created and why it had been maintained for so long. The first few hours gave her nothing unusual. The classification system seemed logical enough on the surface. Dangerous worlds were identified and flagged. Species were warned to stay away. Resources were directed to safer regions. But then she found something strange. It was a set of records from 3,000 years ago. They were buried deep in the archive and marked with security tags that should have kept her out. But the tags were old. The encryption had weakened over the centuries. Laura was able to slip through. What she found made her blood run cold. There was another species. They were called They had evolved on a world classified as Category 6, not as dangerous as Earth but still far more hostile than any council. They had been warriors and explorers. They had developed faster than light travel on their own without help from the council. They had begun expanding into space just as the council was consolidating its power. The records showed that the council had been afraid of them, not because they were violent. In fact, they seemed to have been peaceful traders who wanted nothing more than to join the galactic community. But they were better than the council species at almost everything. They were stronger, they were faster, they could survive in environments that killed council explorers within hours. They could work longer and harder without rest. They could adapt to new situations with terrifying speed. They were competition. Laura read further. Her hands were shaking as she scrolled through the ancient documents. The council of that era had held an emergency session. They had debated what to do about the threat. Some delegates had argued for peaceful integration. Others had argued for war. But the final decision was something far worse than either option. They reclassified Overnight, the planet went from Category 6 to Category 7. All contact was forbidden. All trade routes were closed. They were isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Without access to outside resources, they could not maintain their technology. Without trade partners, they could not sustain their economy. Within 300 years, their civilization had collapsed completely. The last entry in the files was a survey report from 500 years later. A council drone had visited the planet to check on conditions. It found ruins, empty cities, dead forests that were gone. Laura sat back in her chair. She felt sick. She felt angry. She felt something burning in her chest that she could not name. The classification was not science. It was a weapon. It was a way for the council to eliminate any species that threatened their power without firing a single shot. And now they were trying to use it against humanity. She the files to her personal device. Then she sent a message asking him to meet her in their quarters immediately. He arrived 20 minutes later, still looking tired from the demonstration. But when he saw the look on Laura's face, his exhaustion vanished. "What did you find?" Laura showed him everything. The records, the reclassification order, the deliberate isolation, the collapse. Read through the files in silence. His jaw tightened as he reached the end. They murdered an entire species. They did it without weapons or armies. They just cut them off and watched them die. Laura nodded. And they have been doing it for 3,000 years. Every classification since then has been based on the same logic. Not protecting the galaxy from danger, protecting the council from competition. Looked at her. We have to expose this. We have to show the council what their ancestors did. Laura agreed, but she knew it would not be easy. The current council members might not even know about the records had been buried and encrypted for a reason. Someone had wanted them forgotten. But forgotten was not the same as destroyed. The truth was still there waiting to be found. The next morning, Laura requested an emergency session with the full council. She told them she had discovered information relevant to the hearing, information that could not wait. Hex agreed to hear her. He seemed confident. He probably thought she was going to surrender or apologize or ask for mercy. He was wrong. The great chamber was full when Laura arrived. Every delegate was present. Every seat was occupied. The viewing galleries were packed with observers and journalists and curious citizens. Laura walked to the center of the floor. She did not wait for permission to speak. Chancellor, members of the Council, yesterday my colleague demonstrated what a species is capable of. Today I will show you something far more important. She activated her holographic display. The ancient records appeared in the air for everyone to see. 3,000 years ago this council encountered a species called the... They came from a world that you classified as dangerous, but they were not your enemies. They were traders and explorers. They wanted to join your community. She changed the display to show images of cities and ships. But you were afraid of them. You were afraid because they were better than you at survival. They could go places you could not go. They could do things you could not do. They threatened your dominance not through war but through simple superiority. The chamber was silent. Hex had gone pale. His skin flickered with dark colors. So you destroyed them, not with weapons, with paperwork. You reclassified their world. You cut them off from trade and contact. You watched them starve and collapse over 300 years. Laura turned to face the delegates. And then you erased them from history. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted and screamed. Some the accusations, others demanded to see the evidence. The clicked furiously, the churned in their tanks. Hex slammed his hand against his podium. Silence. The noise stopped. These are ancient records. The current council bears no responsibility for the actions of our predecessors. Whatever happened to them was a tragedy, but it is not relevant to this hearing. Stepped forward. It is completely relevant, Chancellor, because you are trying to do the same thing to us. The silence that followed was deeper than anything before. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at the two humans standing in the center of the floor. Laura spoke again. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. The classification is not science. It is policy. It is a weapon designed to suppress any species that threatens your power, and we have proof. She looked around at the frightened faces watching from above. The question now is, what are you going to do about it? The great chamber had never been so quiet. Laura stood in the center of the floor with the evidence displayed for all to see, stood beside her. They were two small figures surrounded by hundreds of alien delegates who were struggling to understand what they had just heard. High Chancellor Hex remained at his podium. His skin had lost most of its glow. The colors that flickered across his body were dim and uncertain. He looked old and tired in a way he had not looked before. Finally he spoke. These records are 3,000 years old. The council that made these decisions no longer exists. We cannot be held responsible for the sins of our ancestors. Laura shook her head. Then change the policy. Hex blinked. What? Change the policy. Open the restricted sectors. Allow contact with species. Let them join the galactic community as equals. A delegate rose from his seat. His mandibles clicked with agitation. That would be madness. Species are dangerous. They are unpredictable. They could destabilize everything we have built. Turn to face the... Yes, we are dangerous. We are unpredictable. That is exactly why you need us. He raised his hand and pointed at the holographic display. Laura changed the image to show a map of known space. Red markers appeared across the map, indicating danger zones and unexplored regions. Your civilization has existed for 10,000 years. In all that time, how much of the galaxy have you explored? How many new systems have you colonized? How many challenges have you overcome? The delegates shifted uncomfortably. No one answered. Continued. You have built a safe and stable society. You have eliminated risk. You have avoided conflict. And you have stagnated. He walked slowly around the center of the floor, looking up at the delegates as he spoke. Look at these red zones on the map. Hostile territories, unexplored regions, spatial anomalies that have destroyed every expedition you have sent. You have been avoiding these places for centuries because they are too dangerous. He stopped and faced Hex directly. But danger is what we are built for. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We did not just survive. We thrived. We conquered. And we did it by facing our fears instead of running from them. Laura stepped forward. Your ancestors recognized this 3,000 years ago. They saw what they could do. They saw that species had something the Council lacked: strength, resilience, the ability to adapt and overcome. She paused, and instead of embracing that strength, they tried to destroy it. They were afraid of competition. They were afraid of change. They chose safety over progress. The chamber was still silent. The delegates were listening now, really listening. Spoke again. We are not asking for your permission, Chancellor. Humanity is already expanding. We are already exploring the regions you have abandoned. We are already making contact with species you have forgotten. He looked around at the assembled delegates. We are offering you a choice. Work with us. Share what you know. Help us understand the galaxy, and in return we will help you face the dangers you have been avoiding. Hex leaned forward. And if we refuse? Did not hesitate. Then we will do what I've always done. We will survive. We will adapt. We will overcome. And eventually we will surpass you. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Every delegate understood what was saying. Humanity was not going to disappear. Humanity was not going to wait for approval. One way or another, they were going to change the galaxy. The only question was whether the Council would be part of that change or left behind. Laura pulled up one final image. It showed Earth from space, blue and green and beautiful despite all its dangers. This is where we come from. This is what made us who we are. You classified it as a world of death, but to us it will always be home. She turned off the display. We do not want to fight you. We do not want to replace you. We want to work alongside you, to explore the unknown together, to build something better than either of us could build alone. She looked at Hex. But that requires trust. It requires you to admit that your classification system was wrong, that species are not threats to be contained, but allies to be welcomed. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. His skin flickered with colors that could not read. Around the chamber, delegates whispered to each other in languages the translators did not catch. Finally, Hex stood. We will not make a decision today. This matter requires deliberation. The Council will adjourn and reconvene when we have reached a consensus. Nodded, he had expected this. Bureaucracies moved slowly everywhere in the universe. But as he and Laura were escorted from the chamber, he saw something that gave him hope. Some of the delegates were looking at them not with fear, but with curiosity. Some of them were nodding as if they agreed with what the humans had said. Change would not happen overnight, but it would happen. 1 year later, the Council announced a revision to the classification system. Category 7 worlds would no longer be automatically restricted. Contact would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. 5 years later, 3 previously isolated species had rejoined galactic society. All of them came from worlds that had been classified as too dangerous for contact. All of them had stories similar to humanity: survival against impossible odds, evolution through pressure and challenge. 10 years later, humanity was granted a seat on the Council of 12 species. Cole was chosen as the first human delegate. He stood in the same chamber where he had once been questioned like a criminal. Now he stood as an equal. Laura continued her research. She led an expedition to the former of the. What she found there changed the understanding of galactic history forever. They had not gone completely extinct. A small population had survived underground. They had been waiting for 3,000 years for someone to find them. Humanity found them. And when they emerged from their hiding places, they looked at the humans who had come to save them, and they saw something familiar. They saw survivors. They saw fighters. They saw people who understood what it meant to come from a world of death. The galaxy had been built by species who feared danger. It had been maintained by species who avoided risk, but it would be transformed by species who embraced both. The classification had been designed to suppress and contain, but in the end it had done the opposite. It had identified the strongest species in the universe. And those species were finally taking their rightful place among the stars.